Right now, people around the world are coping with the stress caused by a serious health crisis, which has been compounded by an economic crisis and a major shift in societal norms. Joining me right now to discuss is Wendy Walsh, a psychologist and host of Mating Matters podcast. Wendy, good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
So what kind of impact is all of this having on mental health?
Well, it's having an enormous impact of mental health because humans are wired to bond, and we are social creatures, and we are many one neurochemistry as we work together. So depending on your type of neurochemistry, the effects may be greater or less. Extroverts tend to be suffering the most, people who need others to really get their energy. Introverts tend to be doing a little better, and people who had pre-existing mental health conditions who are more prone to anxiety and depression are hurting the most.
And so when we talk about all 50 states that are now at least, partially open as we mark the unofficial start of summer, this Memorial Day weekend, how do we manage the sort of coronavirus fatigue that is also kind of permeating out there where people feel like, okay, I'm ready to get back to normal, knowing that normal is going to be very different from this point forward?
Well, there's a lot of social strife going on right now as people fall on one side or the other regarding continuing to quarantine. What we know and what epidemiologists have told us is that while you can't predict the upward slope of a curve, you can certainly predict the downward slope, meaning that if in 8 weeks 90,000 people died, we now know that if we quarantine strictly, that another 90,000 will die. So any opening up continues to increase death rates. So this has caused a lot of strife between those who are just dying to get together and have cocktails in the backyard and get together with neighbors and book groups and think that wearing masks and being 6 feet away, I don't know how you drink wine with a mask on, by the way, is going to be okay. So I will say that people are having to find their individual ways, and we're really seeing the difference between those who think about what is best for the group and those who focus on individual rights and freedoms.
Well, let's talk about the people you were talking about who are already, suffering varying degrees of mental health issues. And when you talk about social isolation, for a lot of people, that kind of translates into feeling depressed by not being around people. We're not hugging like we once were. We're not handshaking. So, how are people who are suffering from, mental health setbacks, how do they protect their physical health while at the same time try to be, reintroduced to what it is to be social again?
It's good that you mentioned hugging and hand-holding, because we do know that that's how we get a real boost of dopamine, right? Feel-good hormone, by actually touching someone. So I always tell people, if you are quarantined with family members, make sure when you're watching TV together that you snuggle on the couch. That sometimes, like I've got teenage daughters, they're sometimes in my bed all night, and I think that that's good for our mental health. If you are absolutely alone and isolated, then you can get the benefits of touch by sadly touching yourself. Giving yourself a foot massage, taking hot baths, putting lotion on, that can really help. Also, use all the other technological surrogates out there, not just Zoom, because we are all getting Zoom fatigue, but about picking up the phone and putting a dear friend in both your earpieces and really connecting and having a long conversation and really, really feeling them in some way.
What about in kids? Do you see it exhibited in different ways? Whether this is putting certain anxieties or stress on the mental fitness of a lot of kids. They're not seeing their friends, their teachers, which was very comforting for a very long time. And now they've, gotten used to, school at a distance from their teachers and friends. What is this doing to them, especially the notion of being reintroduced again, to the masses in some way?
I don't know about you, but I've got one introvert who's very happy to be staying home and not in school because it was always so stressful for her.
Yeah, my 3 out of 3 are actually feeling that way. but go ahead.
Exactly. But we have to remember that children's mental health is usually an offshoot of parents' mental health, right? They're little sponges. And so it's really incumbent on us to self-regulate and manage our own stress and come up with some good coping strategies for ourselves so that we can help our children. And also be comforted by the fact that children have so much neuroplasticity that this is a bump in their social development, but that they can repair very easily. And finally, small children are getting the most important thing they need in the world, which is a close attachment with their parents.
Yeah, being together. But I must say, you know, while my 3 kids are all perfectly happy about being home and not necessarily at school, one of my kids did express recently being nervous about the idea of eventually going back to school. How, you know, how will they know that it's really safe? What do I say?
Well, I think we all have that question. And I think that we want to talk to our kids very plainly in words they can understand about trusting the scientists, trusting the guidelines that are put out there, knowing that schools and indeed workplaces will not put their people in harm. Eventually, as I tell everybody, the lawyers will take care of it all. We're going to see some wild lawsuits flying if people do enter workplaces and schools and become ill. And that's one of the reasons why these organizations are being particularly cautious.
All right, Wendy Walsh, always good to see you. Thank you so much.
Good to see you.